I'm attorney Allison Cohen, Lady Law from Cohen Law Services and the host of Legalese. Yes, if you've just tuned in, folks, you've missed a lot. But the good news is that all of these podcasts are up on our website at cohenlawservices.com, so you can go back and listen to this interview, because I have been fortunate enough to have in the studio three wonderful people, all of whom bring something different to the table about the discussion regarding autism. I have Scott Badash. He is the CEO for Autism Society of America, which is the nation's largest, not largest, sorry, Scott, it is the oldest organization that has been within the autism community since 1965 is when the foundation was founded. We've got Russell Lehman. He is a motivational speaker. He's an author. He's a poet. He has autism, and he's brought his own personal perspective to the table, what it's like to live with autism and how it is to overcome challenges. And he's spreading that message coast to coast. And then we have Dr. Julie Vargas, who is a follow-up and a repeat guest on Legalese. She's been here before, and her father, of course, B.F. Skinner, was the most prominent psychologist in America in the 20th century. And so she's bringing the piece of understanding behavior and operant conditioning and what that looks like through reinforcement of positive reinforcement of behaviors, particularly with anybody that has a disability, but children on the spectrum, because autism spectrum disorders does have a multitude of behaviors that come along with it, including communication issues, social interaction issues. There is that cognitive piece, the inability at times to be able to control emotions or make reasoning decisions. And so this brings about this idea as a community is, how do we get together on these issues? What do we do moving forward? Because if the numbers are there, and I said at the beginning of the show, 1 in 68 now, which has increased from 100, and has increased by 119% from 1 in 150, and that was in the year 2000. So it's growing exponentially. We had a little discussion when I was on with John DePietro as to whether or not, it's an epidemic or a pandemic. Ultimately, it affects worldwide populations. We know that there's some studies coming out of South Korea that say it's closer to 1 in 38, and that at some predictions by the year 2025 it could be 1 in 2. And so again, as a community, how do we provide services? How do we look at the cost component when there's so many competing interests for dollars, from whether that's even local charitable organizations, or whether that's from our government, state and federal, working together through Medicaid and Medicare, both joint programs in order to support individuals with autism and their families. And so in the studios today, I think the combination of these three folks have really been, to me, just a way to open up the dialogue. If you have a question, 508-755-0058. If you want to speak to anybody here, and they'll give you their opinion and their background and their interest in why they're doing what they're doing. So Scott, when we kind of went to break and we introduced this idea again of employment, because to me this is a hugely important piece. You've got the Bureau of Labor Statistics saying that only 19.3% of people with disabilities in the U.S. are participating in the labor force, and out of that 12.9% were unemployed. And we talked a lot about reasonable accommodations for employment and what that might look like. And for somebody who's represented employers and employees over many years, I understand kind of the fear or the not knowing on both sides. And so how does your organization help individuals with autism find work?
It's a great question. First of all, thank you for what you're doing. It's we need more advocates out there who, when someone has to be sued or has to be representative, a little stronger than some of us could represent. So thank you for what you're doing.
Appreciate that.
Our philosophy is that it's more than just someone saying, yes, I'll hire someone with autism. That should just be part of their everyday thing. So what we do is we want that person to have an experience with that organization, that company, that's going to be very beneficial to him or her and the company and to the other employees. So when a company comes to us, or we work with the company, we'll look around, and the first thing we do will bring people like Russell and others who have autism to walk around and pick up things like the sensory, the lights, saying there's too much brightness here. There's too much noise in this section.
Right.
And say, here's some accommodations. We'll look around and say, this may be a little too much for that person. We'll suggest to the employer that the employee that's going to be placed there with autism gets a mentor, not necessarily in their department, which is good for any type of employee.
Absolutely.
So what we find is anything we're suggesting, every other employee will say, the lights were too bright. We'll also make sure that HR may have issues, or someone will come up and they may not have been trained on how to deal with various issues that may come up. So we have a group of professionals that we help, who we could call upon, so the HR people want to help. And we'll also look at other things, that sometimes work schedules. It's sometimes very difficult to deal with rush hour for any of us. So we'll say, could the person start at 9:30, maybe work till 6, instead of starting at 8:30 and working to 5, when there may just be too much pressure. Every time we do that, we find two things. The employer will say, this is the best employee I have. And every other employee will say, every one of these accommodations made me a better employee.
I love that, Scott. Julie, you wanted to jump in on this. I love the discussion of what I call more than reasonable accommodations, changing work schedules, lighting. If people have even back injuries, a lot of my clients, what about the standing desk? There are simple things that can allow people to do wonderful work, and why not give them a chance? But go ahead, Julie, because I know you're going to build off of this.
Well, one of the things that makes an employment situation good is when the people who are the supervisors use positive methods. And there is a move to train supervisors in ABA principles, so that when they control an employee, because you always have to control your employees, you do it through positive means. And one of the I should mention the B.F. Skinner Foundation. Right. One of the things we do is to try to promote this whole approach of treating everybody with positive methods, and we have a free magazine.
Tell us about it, Julie. Because everyone, you're all going to give obviously your information, but I don't mind that it's come up right now. Julie, tell us, give us a little bit of information on the website.
Yes, well, one of the things that the foundation does is to publish this magazine. It's called Operant, and it's free. You just go to bfskinner.org and sign up. And what it does is it tells about what's going on in behavior analysis worldwide.
Right.
And some of it is actually translated into other languages. It gives the basic scientific foundations and just really makes a worldwide community of people interested in behavior analysis, and many of them are working with people with autism.
Julie, when I think about your dad, and I graduated, I don't know if I've told you this before, the Bachelor of Science in Psychology, and he was my the guru, and his approaches to how he thought about behavior, and I have been a big believer in his work my entire life. What do you think he would have been thinking now about where we are in terms of autism? Would he have seen that as a greater challenge to modifying behavior than with, for example, typical children or just adults or any organism in general?
I love that question. My father was always a real kid person. He loved youngsters. And he also always felt that the test of any science was how well it could be used to improve the life of people. And the fact that so many people are benefiting from applied behavior analysis techniques derived from his science would have pleased him. He would be smiling from ear to ear. He had no idea that it would go so fast into the community and help especially kids, because he loved kids.
And so the listening audience is aware applied behavior analysis is the only proven scientific method for the treatment of autism. That's very important, folks, that we get that out there. Part of education is making sure that proper statistics go out there and proper facts go out there. That's how we are able to learn, grow, and advocate. Russell, when I think about what you've done in your advocacy piece, I mean, it's overwhelming, to be honest. And give us a little bit of a story of the first time that you decided to speak about your own experience.
That's a great question. The first time was when I wrote my book, Inside Out, Stories and Poems from an Autistic Mind. And that was 6 years ago. I was 20 years old. And I really started, I didn't intend to write a book. I started writing poetry. I found that poetry was a great outlet for my emotions to be able to visually digest what I'm feeling. To be able to visually digest that really helped me, dissect my situation and how to come to terms with what I'm feeling and how to cope better. So eventually I compiled all these poems, and mainly about how I'm feeling and what it's like just to live my life. And I thought, well, maybe other people might want to read this. So I wrote a short autobiography of my life up until that point, age 20. And I just put it out there, not really expecting anything big, but the feedback I got was tremendous. People from all around the world would email me and just say thank you for giving this raw, natural, transparent look into autism and your emotions, and you don't hold anything back. Because the book is very open, and I read it now and I'm like, wow, did I really say that?
It's authentic. It's authentic,
yeah.
Russell, which is what makes you such a
Yeah.
wonderful person. And hearing your story on the level that you've been willing to talk about it is what changes minds. It's what it changes hearts. Folks, I can't believe it, I know, but we're up against a break, and Dave Russell, the wonderful producer that's staying here with us in the studios through another hour, will give me kind of the stink eye if I don't go to break on better time. So don't go anywhere. There's more to come. News Radio 580 AM, 94.9 FM, Worcester's news, weather, traffic station. Legalese will be right back.